Okay, let's unpack this. Picture uh, a grand, imposing Victorian manor house.
Right. Standing proudly on a hill.
Exactly. Overlooking a town. Sort of a real symbol of achievement, prosperity.
That's Monte Cristo Homestead. In June, New South Wales, Australia.
Christopher William Crawley built it, this magnificent double-story home, way back in 1885.
Yeah, and it was clearly meant to make a statement, a testament to success.
Absolutely. But when you start digging into the history, it seems almost immediately a darker story began to, well, weave itself into the place.
It really did, and that's why Monte Cristo, for all its historical importance and beauty.
It's probably most famous for something else entirely.
For a much more chilling reason, yeah. Its reputation.
Australia's most haunted house.
That's the one.
So our mission in this deep dive, looking at the sources you shared, is to go beyond just like the surface level ghost stories.
Right. We want to understand the alleged historical events behind it all.
Yeah. What forms the foundation of this reputation? Explore the specific things people report seeing or feeling.
And maybe see what this whole history might tell us about how deep sorrow or perceived injustice can supposedly, cling to a place.
Leave a mark somehow.
Exactly. Leave a lasting mark.
And we've looked at quite a mix of sources, haven't we?
We have. There are historical accounts, lots of reports from visitors, even owners talking about their personal experiences.
And different takes on what might be causing it all.
It's a really fascinating mix, documented history alongside these very compelling personal claims.
So our journey through these sources, it takes us right from the start, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. The building of the house, the life of the Crawley family there.
And then through this series of really quite unsettling tragedies, things reported to have happened right there on the property.
Yeah, leading right up to today, really. The present-day accounts of weird occurrences and, people still trying to figure it out.
What's really striking, I think, looking across all the material, is how a place that was designed as this, celebration of life and success became so tangled up with these stories of death and sorrow and alleged injustice.
It's true. The narrative isn't just about the building itself. It's about a location where past events are said to be, well, not just remembered, but actively felt.
So digging into that early history that the sources lay out, Crawley built it in 1885, lives there with his wife, Elizabeth.
Yep, the beginning. But then the narrative shifts quite quickly.
It does. The homestead is described almost like a magnet for tragedy.
That's a good way to put it. It seems to accumulate this unusually high number of reported deaths, within the walls and on the grounds.
Okay, so what are the first big ones?
Well, one of the earliest, and one you hear about a lot, involves a young housemaid.
Ah, yes. The story there.
As is usually told in the reports, is that she was pregnant, out of wedlock.
Right.
And she allegedly either fell or was pushed from the second-story balcony. She died.
Gosh. And the sources often suggest potential foul play.
Some do, yeah. To conceal the pregnancy. It's often presented as this stark example of the kind of alleged injustice that some people think fuels the haunting.
That is an incredibly grim start for the house's story.
It is. And the pattern, well, it didn't stop there, according to the reports.
There were other deaths involving children. That's mentioned a lot.
Heartbreakingly, yes. One account talks about a young boy, maybe a servant, who reportedly suffered a broken neck.
Oh.
The story is he fell or was pushed down the grand staircase.
Oh, no.
And then later, another really tragic report details a child who allegedly burned to death in their crib, right there in the house.
So these aren't just natural deaths happening nearby.
No, that's an important point about how these events are recounted in the sources. They often have these specific, violent, or accidental circumstances within the house or on the grounds.
It wasn't just inside the main building.
No, the tragic reports extended outside, too. There was a stable boy apparently burned to death in the stable on the property.
It just seems relentless.
It does. And the string of misfortune, as presented in the sources, it seems to have stretched even to people who lived there later, or caretakers.
Right, there's the story of a caretaker described as mentally disabled.
Yes. And he's believed to have been shot dead on the veranda by a later owner, supposedly.
And even Mr. Crawley himself, Christopher William. He died at the homestead.
He did, age 70. Officially, it was reportedly from a carbuncle infection, which is nasty enough.
Yeah.
But, among people familiar with the property's lore, the sources mention whispers, theories, suggesting maybe darker circumstances around his death in his own home.
And after Christopher died, his wife, Elizabeth, She kind of retreated.
Massively. She reportedly entered this state of extreme reclusion.
How long are we talking?
The sources say she stayed inside the homestead for 23 years.
23 years.
Inside.
Apparently never leaving the property, not even for church, before she eventually passed away in her bedroom at 92.
Wow. That prolonged isolation. That definitely adds another layer, doesn't it? Oh, absolutely. A layer of profound sorrow, a maybe oppressive atmosphere to the house's history. It contributes hugely to the whole narrative.
So you have this foundation, grand ambition, right?
Yeah.
But then it gets overlaid with a series of reported violent, untimely deaths, plus this period of deep personal sorrow and isolation with Mrs. Crawley.
It's a very heavy narrative, isn't it? Underpinning the physical place.
Definitely.
And it's really this tragic history that serves as the dramatic backdrop.
The backdrop for the haunting reputation.
Exactly. That's how it seems to have been built up and, importantly, kept going, especially after the Ryan family bought the place in 1963.
The current owners.
Yes. And the sources really highlight that they themselves became major proponents of the haunting narrative.
Because they experienced things themselves.
Reportedly, yes. Numerous inexplicable phenomena apparently starting pretty soon after they moved in.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Because the reports, they aren't just vague feelings, are they?
No, often they're quite specific, and they seem directly tied to the historical figures and events we just talked about.
Like who? Who's reported most often?
The figure reported most frequently seems to be the ghost of Mrs. Elizabeth Crawley, especially in her old bedroom.
What do people say they experience?
Visitors describe feeling her presence, or sometimes seeing her, often characterized as, sad or distressed. Some accounts specifically mention her appearing to female visitors, maybe interpreted as her still searching for her husband, or just lingering because of that long reclusion and dying in that room.
It's a powerful image, especially knowing her story.
It really resonates.
And what about the child? The one associated with the staircase fall?
Also frequently reported. Visitors describe hearing a child's footsteps, maybe cries or eerie whispers.
Whereabouts?
Sometimes specifically coming from the nursery area. There are even reports of people feeling like a small hand tugging at their leg.
Wow, okay. That suggests more than just, residual energy. It suggests alleged interaction.
Some interpret it that way, yes. Then there's the housemaid, the one who reportedly fell from the balcony.
Another key figure.
Yes, she's described in some pretty horrifying accounts as a spectral figure seen repeating her fall.
Gosh, from the second store.
And the caretaker, who was allegedly shot, he's said to linger on the veranda.
Still watching over the grounds where he reportedly died.
That's the idea, yeah. Seemingly still watching. So you see how these specific alleged hauntings directly mirror the reported tragedies.
It's very neat, almost too neat sometimes, but compelling.
It is. And beyond these specific figures, the sources describe Monte Cristo as a center for general poltergeist activity.
Right. That's the term for physical stuff happening.
Exactly. Physical disturbances, lights flickering when they shouldn't, objects moving on their own.
What kind of objects?
Everything from small knickknacks to reportedly even heavier furniture. Disembodied voices, unexplained noises, chill and screams are also widely reported.
So a whole range of phenomena.
A very wide range.
Yeah.
And many visitors also talk about just an overwhelming feeling of dread, unease.
A sense of being watched.
Yeah, a strong sense of being watched, particularly in certain spots like the basement or Mrs. Crawley's old bedroom.
And didn't some sources mention something about a dog?
Yes, there's even mention in some accounts of a dog's spirit being felt or seen on the property.
So what proponents find compelling?
Right, is the sheer volume and a consistency of these diverse reports from different unrelated people over decades.
Often people who didn't know the specific history beforehand.
That's often claimed, yes, which makes the alignment seem more significant to them.
It does make you wonder, like the sources touch upon, is this like the residual energy of all that trauma?
Yeah, profound trauma, violent ends, somehow imprinted on the place.
Or, as others suggest, are these conscious spirits, unable or unwilling to leave where they suffered or where they felt that injustice?
And this leads us right into the different ways people try to interpret all this, the different lenses, you could say.
Okay, so for skeptics?
For skeptics, well, many of the reported things can be attributed to perfectly natural causes, especially in an old house like this.
Makes sense. Like what?
Things like, the natural creaks and groans of old timber settling, drafts moving things or creating weird sounds.
Old wiring causing lights to flicker.
Exactly. Outdated electrical systems, all pretty common.
And critically, there's the psychological angle,
A
right?
huge factor, the psychological impact of simply knowing the house's reputation.
So people arrive expecting weird things.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
And that can strongly influence perception. It can lead to misinterpreting ordinary noises or, visual tricks of the light as something paranormal.
The power of suggestion.
Absolutely. And confirmation bias. The human mind is great at finding patterns, maybe unconsciously looking for spooky stuff because you already know the chilling stories. You're primed for it.
But then the proponents, they look at the same source material.
They do, and they argue that the sheer consistency, the variety, and the specificity of the phenomena reported
Across so many different people over so many years.
goes beyond just simple natural explanations or suggestion. They point to the very specific nature of some reported hauntings.
Like seeing a figure fall from the balcony or a child near the stairs.
Right. They see those as particularly compelling because they align so closely with the alleged historical deaths. Too specific to be just coincidence or creaky floorboards, they'd argue.
This is where Monte Cristo becomes more than just a list of spooky events, doesn't it?
It really does. It becomes this fascinating case study. It explores how historical narrative, especially ones soaked in tragedy and alleged injustice.
How that narrative can profoundly shape our experience and interpretation of a place.
Yes. Regardless of whether you believe in literal spirits or not, the enduring mystery isn't just what people report experiencing.
But why? Why are these experiences reported so consistently?
And how does the house's specific tragic history seem to fuel that phenomenon? Is it the unresolved injustices, the violent ends?
Or just the collective weight of all that sorrow somehow, permeating the location?
Those are the big questions it raises.
This homestead, it really stands as this tangible link to a past era, doesn't it?
A time with different social norms, often brutal realities.
And the alleged hauntings, whether you see them as literal spirits or as these incredibly powerful historical echoes, maybe psychological phenomena,
Yeah.
they serve as this chilling reminder of the lives that reportedly ended tragically or unfairly within those walls.
It's a place where the past doesn't just feel distant. For many, it feels unnervingly present.
Monte Cristo Homestead. Through all these reports and histories, it really serves as a powerful, if unsettling, testament
To the idea that some stories, some sorrows, are said to refuse to fade away.
It's a place where history isn't just something you read about in a book.
For many people who go there, it's something that's felt. In the cold spots, heard in whispers, seen in the shadows.
Okay, so we've taken quite a deep dive into the history of this, remarkable, but definitely troubled homestead.
Following its story from those ambitious beginnings.
Right through that string of alleged tragedies that reportedly unfolded there.
Yeah.
Inside the walls, on the property.
The housemaid, the children, the stable boy, the caretaker.
Even Mr. Crawley himself, possibly. And we can't forget Mrs. Crawley's long, isolated reclusion.
No, that's a huge part of it. And we've explored the wide array of alleged paranormal phenomena people have reported over the years.
From those specific apparitions, seemingly tied to those individuals.
Like Mrs. Crawley, the maid, the child, the caretaker.
To more general poltergeist activity, those chilling feelings of dread, even that reported dog spirit.
And we've looked at how this whole story gets interpreted through different lenses.
Yeah, the skeptical view, natural explanation, psychological factors.
Versus the proponents who highlight the consistency, the specificity of reports that they feel tied directly back to the historical events and alleged injustices. Finding those conventional explanations just, inadequate.
Monte Cristo really serves as this powerful, unsettling reminder, doesn't it, of a past with different, often harsher realities.
It does. And whether you lean towards literal spirits or see it more as, collective grief, historical narrative, psychological impact.
The alleged hauntings still serve as this chilling echo. An echo of lives reportedly marked by tragedy and injustice, tied to that specific place.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how places with such intense traumatic histories become focal points for these kinds of stories.
And how our understanding of that history shapes everything that comes after.
Definitely.
So building on all this history, we've discussed the reported tragedies, the alleged injustices within Monte Cristo Homestead, and on its grounds. Here's a final thought for you to consider, based on our deep dive today.
Okay.
Given that pattern of reported events and the very long, very dark history associated with the place, What do you think allows a location like Monte Cristo Homestead to gain and then maintain its reputation as Australia's most haunted house for such a remarkable length of time?